to today's expert webinar on advanced presentation skills. I am Ria from SpringPeople, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Thank you all for joining us. In today's business environment, effective presentations are all about clarity, visual storytelling, and audience engagement. This session will help you learn how to create impactful presentations using structured communication, visual techniques, and AI-powered tools like Microsoft Copilot. And we are delighted to have Ms. Dilnawaz Dilzi Irani with us today. With over 14 years of experience in business communication, leadership development, executive storytelling, and soft skills training, she has trained professionals across leading organizations including EY, Deloitte, Amazon, Deutsche Bank, HDFC Bank, Vodafone, Rakuten, Etihad Airways, and Adani Groups. During this session, she will share practical strategies to transform content into engaging presentations, simplify complex information, and deliver messages with greater impact and confidence. If you have any questions during the session, please share them in the questions panel. We will address them during the Q&A session at the end. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Over to you, Mr. Nawaz.
Thank you very much, Ria. I must tell you, you've set the benchmark really high for us to achieve quite a lot of things in the next 55 minutes or so. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Guys, today we're going to focus on a couple of things. We're going to look at an introduction of presentations with a different angle. Okay. We're also going to look at two specific angles over here. We're going to look at how do you convert text to visual text so that there is less cognitive load on the audience. We're also going to look at how do you bridge from generic prompts for Copilot or any other AI that you use to actually getting something which is useful, is little effort that you need to put towards the end to get the output that you want. And in phase 3, we're actually going to do a sprint where you're going to do it individually, and I'll show you some of the options that can be used. So that's our roadmap for today. While we're looking at this, please remember this is about presenting. So when you have the option of presenting a presentation, some of these will change when you're sending it across. And I'll also call out what are the changes that you need to incorporate if you're sending a presentation across to someone else. So when we're looking at presentations, when we jump into looking at presentations, think about a typical day, okay? Think about you running on back-to-back calls. You're jumping from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting. And throughout all of this, you're suddenly pulled into the session where a presenter is sharing a slide, which is packed with a lot of details. A lot of details are included. Now, the moment you visually see that, your brain switches off, says, nope, that's too much. I already have an overload going on with all the different meetings that I've jumped into. And now I have to look at this particular data-heavy slide, so it switches off. As presenters, we have a 10-second we just have a 10-second window, okay? A 10-second window in which we can convey our impact statement to the audience. This impact statement captures their attention. This impact statement captures their intention, captures the entire focus, and brings them to the table curious. Think of it like a fish, okay? You throw a hook out and you suddenly get a bite. You're not doing a lot of effort. The fish starts tugging on the hook. That's exactly what these 10 seconds do. Our first phase is going to help you look at that. How do you break down a lot of the information that is there on a slide in a PowerPoint? How do you break it down to the bare minimum? Okay, I'll give you about 15 seconds. Just look at both of these on the screen. Look at both of these examples which are on the screen right now. Now, if you look at the verbose reality, that's generally most of our presentations. It's not saying all of our presentations. It's not saying that every single slide looks like this. Not at all. But every time we make a choice about adding data, adding information, how much information becomes critical. The first task that we look at, and this is the first phase that we're going to target, is converting this data-heavy impact statement that we want to bring to the front into a visual text format. How do you go about doing that? Now, that is what we're going to practice. If you look at any of your slide titles, okay, if you look at your executive summaries, you will see that, yes, they are shorter statements than long paragraphs, but there is still an area for improvement, because remember, our attention grabbing window is all of 10 seconds. So we're going to look at how do you convert that, how do you work on that. To do that, we're going to focus on just two things today. We're going to focus on the anchor word and the impact metric. Now, when we talk about the anchor word, it's basically your strategic compass. Okay, think of it as a noun, a singular noun, or a high impact action verb, which defines the business reality. Basically, what happened? What happened at that point in time? It could be user satisfaction. It could be infrastructure integrity. It could be skill bridge. It could be any of these business realities that you want to highlight or that you want to convey. You bring that to the forefront, right? Now, this is not enough because this does not convey anything. Now you need to add a metric to quantify it. Saying that there has been an improvement does not convey much. It's actually just words. It is nothing. And most of us know this. What we tend to do is we tend to add a metric to it. Now, this is quite simply put, the mathematical baseline. Yeah? The quantifiable proof which gives the anchor the weight that it needs to convey the impact that you want. When you bring both of these together, now that is when you achieve true clarity. Yeah? It's with the precision of your anchor word, your anchor phrase, with the impact metric that you can convey something which forces your audience to sit up and take notice. Okay? When I showed you the previous slide where I was talking about user satisfaction at 92%. Now the question you'd ask, okay, user satisfaction regarding what? Now that gives me as a presenter an opportunity to talk to you, to have that conversation. I may not have 15 minutes, not at all. I may need to convey this in 30 seconds, but I still have got you to ask me that question or interested you in finding out what is this 92% user satisfaction. That is where we start off, looking at the anchor word and the impact metric. I'll just pause over here for a quick 10 seconds to see if we have any questions. Jumping ahead. So when you're looking at a couple of exercises, that's what I'm going to get you to do next. I'm going to get you to look at 3 examples. Okay, these are across different business units, different functions that would be working together. So I'm going to let you choose whichever one makes most sense to you. Pick one of these 3 examples. Okay, if you are more associated with finance, pick up the finance example. Tech, then pick up tech. HR or L&D, pick up HR or L&D. Here's what you need to do. You need to identify for me what is the anchor word and what is the impact metric. Okay, phrase it together and put it down. You don't need to share it with us. You need to do this for yourself. Can you identify it? Simple enough exercise. I'll give you 15. All right, time's up. So let's see what you have versus what I've put down. Remember, these are all options. Okay, there are no rights, no wrongs with presentation skills. It's all how you're putting it down. So here are some options. If you've selected finance, if you've selected tech, if you've selected L&D. If you've selected finance, we are looking at a 22% revenue surge with 5% operational reduction. I would delete the balance and reduce it further. The 22% revenue surge with 5% operational reduction. For the tech, 99.9% infrastructure uptime, blocking 200 daily threats. And L&D or HR, 15% skill gap closure with a 90% employee retention rate. Now you see today in our world, with the impact of having a lot of information available makes our attention spans really short. When you have something which is as specific as this, it forces a person to pay attention to what you're trying to say, because you're not trying to give a full story right now with a small impact statement. You're trying to give them a real version of the entire presentation. This helps them make connections mentally. This helps them decide, okay, this is what Dilsey has put together. Let me try and see, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? It gives them a way to approach and think about it further. But how do they think about it? That entire burden lies with us, right? Now, while this is excellent for us when we are presenting, because we are the people who are delivering. So all the back-end data that we feel that we need to have on the slide, the thinking, the analysis, the breakdown of the data, all of that, which forms the backbone of the impact statement over here, we feel it is important to put that on the slide. There's a slight difference here. It's important for us to know as presenters. It's important for you to know when you're talking about these data sets. Is it important for the presentation? Well, is the story about how much you've done the analysis? Is the story about the impact statement? Is the story about you finding out the root cause and looking at the solution that you want to propose next? Too much information brings the attention away from what you want to drive your stakeholders who are part of your presentation to focus on. You don't want to do that. If you're sending a presentation across, now if you're emailing this across, you may want to add an additional slide which talks about where they can find this additional information. It could be another document that you've put together, a report that you've put together, which talks about why there's been a 22% revenue surge, or why has the operational reduction only been 5%, whereas the team had targeted a 12% operational reduction. All of these questions that need to be answered could be part of a different document, because what is the purpose of your presentation is what is driving your impact statement. When you're looking at this, now I'm just going off on a slight tangent. When you're creating your impact statement, there has to be, as the fundamentals of any concept, any information that you present, there have to be 3 legs that it rests on, not 2. 1 is data, the logic behind it. 2 is the credibility of the data. Where is it from? What is it based on, right? Where have you got these numbers from? And the third one, what are you trying to invoke in the stakeholders who are listening to your presentation, who are part of your presentation, who are observing you, who are listening to you and are figuring out what to do next with their business strategy? These 3 are fundamental principles that all of us have been using constantly without even focusing too much about it. The Aristotle's rhetoric, that's what it's called. So whenever you do have time, please go back and look at it. So we look at the impact statement. We look at what is it that we're trying to drive in terms of the impact. Each slide needs to have one focused impact that you want to drive. The moment you have data clutter, the moment you have overuse of data, overuse of graph, remember, cognitive load is getting triggered because your stakeholder, your audience who's viewing this information, they don't know your thought process. They don't know your intention. They don't know how you're thinking. So you have to guide their thinking by limiting how much you're giving them on one particular slide. That is why I'm now going to look at the next slide. This one, we are talking about the corporate tool set. Now, here when we talk about the tool set, I'm actually talking about using AI, right? We all leverage AI. It's an amazing tool. Some of us use it as a shortcut because we don't have enough time, we don't have enough bandwidth, we don't have enough mental capacity to be able to do these kind of things, and we're really grateful to have a support system in the form of an agent who can help do these functions for us. Okay, now it's great that we all use it, but it's not a shortcut, unfortunately. And I'm sure all of you have experienced this. This is not something new that you're hearing for the first time. You're looking at AI, and whenever you put in your prompts, your commands, if you're giving it all the information that you're thinking about, it again does not know how to process it. So we have to give it specific guidance. AI models are, well, they're trained on historical data aggregates. They optimize for symmetry, for decoration, for semantic density when it comes to presentations. So when you hand Copilot an unconstrained prompt, can you create a presentation for me using these data sets? It relies on mathematical averages. It doesn't really know what exactly you're looking for. As a result, we land in wasting multiple attempts. We waste a lot of time. At the end of it, sometimes we land up doing the entire presentation all over again. So it's not really helping us. So while we're getting visually polished templates that are devoid of contextual business empathy, we are spending a lot of time on giving it the context. So we need to ensure that our strategic intent before we even start with putting the prompt in is in place. So the AI tool operates strictly as a tactical execution mechanism. That's all that it does. We have to drive the narrative, okay? We have to drive what we want and how do we want it to yield it. So when we are creating the narrative, we are looking at it from two angles. We are looking at the prompt, we are looking at the constraint. Right now, when I'm saying prompt and constraint, what I mean to say is we want to give it certain restrictions. We want it to give it certain conditions so that it can have a boundary wall within which it can work. Okay. Now, when I'm talking about the boundary wall, I'll give you an example of what I mean to say. When you look at the prompt on the left, that's a standard prompt. Okay. Very simple. We may give it context in terms of the industry that we're in. We may give it context in terms of the team or the department we're in. We may give it context in terms of this is the output that we want. This is the kind of structure that we want. We'll give it all of that context. Right? There are certain other contexts that we have to give, which is the constraint prompt. We build a boundary wall and we tell the AI, within this, you have to be able to create that particular presentation slide. So how do you create this boundary wall? You strip it of all of its freedom to decorate, because that's not the key that we're looking at right now. So you look at some deterministic parameters. Quite simply, you first define the hero parameter. Okay, the hero metric is basically where you remove the mathematical variable. You remember earlier we spoke about anchor, we spoke about the impact metric. So the mathematical anchor is what you bring in over here first. That's a hero metric. Now you bring in the next factor. The next factor is the semantic anchor. This is the contextual anchor that you can add in, which could be as simple as a revenue surge. Okay, like the example that I've given you over here. So it forces the text engine to eliminate any descriptive prose. It removes all other noise that is there, and it focuses or sticks to high impact corporate nouns then, because you've given it an anchor. an anchor point from which it will look at everything else. The third thing we do is we give it style and a focused token isolation. So you can here, and this is completely optional, you can demand a rigid premium aesthetic for them. You can, like over here, you can see I've put down Swiss minimalistic and I've put down 5 words, right? Because I want it focused. These positive and negative constraints, when you introduce them, you choke out the AI's loop to hallucinate. Okay. If any of you have worked on Copilot, on Gemini, of course, the current iterations are much better than the earlier ones. You would notice that after a certain point, it is giving you data which does not make sense, or it's giving you input which you are wondering, how is this fitting in over here? Right? A lot of times we finish our download, we go through it, and just at the time when we're doing our final check, we realize that one of the slides does not speak the same thing as the other. It's a repetition. That is what's happening. So you're forcing the machine for each of the slides, you're forcing it to reallocate 100% of its processing power towards clean symmetry, towards absolute clarity on what you want to deliver. So constraint prompt has 3 factors. You look at a hero metric. What is the metric that you want to drive through that particular slide? You want to look at an anchor. What is the action word that we spoke about earlier? The anchor word. So you look at that. And now you look at what is the style, or you look at giving it limitations in terms of the words. Now this you can also use with data sets. If you're going to give it a complete data set of, let's say, your L&D training programs for the last year, and you're asking it to generate a presentation which will give you the output of showing you what is the kind of impact created through the programs based on the feedback, based on operational observations, based on all the other recommendations that have come in. You give it all of this. The moment you give it all of this information, it will create a lot of noise for you. So you need to bring it down to for each slide, and that's where it becomes effort for us. So it's not a shortcut. It needs direction. It needs our input, and the input comes in terms of the boundary walls that we built around it. So this is an example of how you can build the boundary wall around it. I'm just going to give you a quick task over here. Do this for yourselves again and see if you're able to put down any one of these 3. Just make a note of it for yourself. See if you're able to come up with a constraint prompt. You're leveraging the first 2 things that we've covered, which is the anchor words and the impact metric. Okay, let me share with you. This could be one of the prompts that you can put in for that slide. All right, we've looked at presentations so far, and I'm going to jump into one more thing before we look at a little bit of storytelling. Okay, so we're going to look at a declutter sprint. And this is something that you're going to do again on your own. I'm going to share with you a very quick exercise where I'm going to show you a paragraph, and I want you to try and declutter it. Okay, so you have to identify one word that drives the ROI narrative. You've got to remove every word that does not add any quantifiable weight. And I want you to amplify the hero metric to dominate the visual landscape. Okay, just put it down in words, what it would look like. How do you see it as an output? So identify one word that drives the ROI, remove all of the words that don't add any quantifiable weight, and amplify the hero metric. Let's see if you're able to do that. Sure, you will succeed. Here is the paragraph where I want you to try this out. You can put in your response in Mentimeter. I've put a code over here for you. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half, 90 seconds to do this. You've got 20 seconds to go. 5 seconds. I'm just switching screens right now. Just a minute. Sharing my screen with everyone. Okay. Look, these are uh, excellent first attempts. Okay. Excellent first attempts. Uh, Cost savings, 88% curriculum completion rate. Uh, we have two over here, hero metrics. One is 88% curriculum completion, and the second one is $120,000, right? Saved. We have curriculum completion. Here we have takeaway, which is put down over here. But more or less, if you look at it, 120K saved in OPEX, 120K savings in OPEX. Good job, guys. Good job. Like I said, some of you've got it bang on. Okay, some of you, when you're looking at having this kind of an impact statement, try and reduce it. Focus on what is the hero metric, what is the anchor, and what is the limitation that you want to give. This is, thank you. Just going to come back to our presentation. So if you're looking at this particular slide, if I can share this slide once again, there we go. The easy part over here was the numbers. The data is always easy because it shouts out. Yeah. That's why it's very easy for us to look at what are the data points for everything. When it comes to identifying the anchor, now that is where a lot of us miss out. So if you look at it, the data shouts out, and that's why we had an easy data pick. It was either 88% or 120K, right? But what is this entire thing talking about? Yes, it's about 120K, which was saved, right? But what is the anchor? What is the anchor around it? Here is an option for you to consider. So 120K, travel was eliminated. Impact sustainable ROI via blended learning. So if you look at, I'm just going to wait over here for a couple of seconds. I want you to compare what you've put down to what is over here. And then I'm going to go take you back to that slide, because it's important for you to be able to see the difference and how it's being built around it. Now I'm taking you back. Pull up yours. Take a look at this. Pull up your response. Take a look at this. Now look at what the paragraph was or what you had to convert. So a lot of times when we have data, when we have numbers, we tend to pick up the words which are closest to the numbers. The words closest to the numbers have value. You have to be able to read and look at what is the other words where the meaning of the paragraph stays. The entire meaning of the paragraph rests on a couple of words, and everything else around it is noise. Us being able to remove that noise is the first challenge we have when it comes to picking up the data set. The next thing is, how do I give this as a prompt to Copilot to be able to create something? So when it comes to prompting Copilot, you have to give it a boundary wall. And unfortunately, if you look at creating a 5-deck slide at one shot, a lot of times you'll see that there are errors. So my advice is take one slide at a time to work with Copilot. And when you're doing that, you have to identify what are the boundaries. So you find out your hero metric, you find out what is the boundary wall you want to identify for it, and then you can feed that across to Copilot to create your slide. Yes, I'm so sorry. I just saw your message right now. I apologize. I'm just going to reshare my screen once again. Thanks, Mehul. All right, so now you look at what is over here. Now, what you see on the screen is basically the crux of that particular paragraph. It's talking about what that entire paragraph is trying to convey. Now you do the comparison. Your paragraph, your input, look at the comparison. Look at how close, how far you are. Look at what you missed. And now when you look at it, go back to the paragraph. Let me just share the paragraph with you once again. Here it is. Now when you look at the paragraph, you can see that we're picking up the numbers effectively, but we're missing out on the crux. So if you now do a comparison, you'll be able to see what is the difference, what is the similarity, which are the points that you've got bang on, which are the ones that you need to tighten your focus on. I'm going to cover just one more thing, which I think is very important, and that's related to creating a storyline for yourself. Storylines are based on clarity that we have. Okay, the clearer you are about what your presentation wants to convey, that much clearer you'll be able to get your storyline. Now, how do you create that narrative? I'm going to share that with you. Just give me 30 seconds. While I'm trying to sort out my technical challenges, I'll be happy to answer if there is any question. The most simplest structure when it comes to storyline is basically looking at situation, complication, and the answer. Situation, question, complication, answer.